Okay. Welcome everyone at home. Welcome to everyone in the room. Hey, great to see you. Great to see you. And the tree's getting light. If that's too much light, I'm sure we could close the blind there. Uh, Welcome everyone. Great to see you. Can you see the screen okay? Would it be better if we close it? Either way? Okay. I'm sorry. All right, well, I'll start if anyone has any directions. So welcome. Before lately I've been starting, I just want to give you the rundown because it's a true pleasure to be with great naturalists like yourselves today. I was with naturalists yesterday at the Bashkill. I'll be with when I was then with some the day before in Pike County, PA. I'll be with some soon, and I'm always struck that just there's such a great community of people who enjoy nature. And if you're not connected in that yet, there's people who are just like you. They love to get out, they love to observe nature. So I just like to start off by throwing the Orange County Audubon Society not only leads lots of hikes and walks here, but they preserve habitat in 5 sanctuaries that they have. A wonderful habitat that's preserved is the Bashkill, just over the border in Sullivan County. And in the property of the Bashkill is the Mamakating Environmental Education. We did a walk at the Bashkill yesterday, and then we had an eagle talk at Meek, the Mamakating Environmental Education Center. That's absolutely wonderful. I will be mentioning the Nature Watch program, which some of you know well. I'll be mentioning that presently. And then there are others. There's the Sullivan County Audubon Society, the Edgar Mearns Bird Club. There's Friends of the Shawangunk Grasslands, the Wallkill. There's the Gifford Pinchot Audubon Society. So I always like to start out that just, there's a lot of people getting outside looking at wildlife. And if that's something you'd like to do, I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. I'm sure they'd love you to, come and join them um, on walks and talks. You can belong to many of them. I belong to all of them. So, we're all getting outside, enjoying the birds, and that's great. And it's such a great time of the year to see eagles. So that's the topic of today's conversation. At the end, we can obviously divert a little bit because I've been getting emails from a couple of you that you've been seeing some great things like the barred owl at Goshen. We saw tundra swans yesterday at the Bashkill. I saw even some more tundra swans, as I think I mentioned, near Montgomery, in addition to some snow geese. So it's a great time of year to be out. And if you're thinking about spring migration, just as we'll see with eagles, it stretches a long time. So we'll get to eagles only in a second. But when you talk about ducks, when do they migrate? Well, it depends what ducks you're looking at. Like the ringneck ducks, the pintails, they'll be now. We were seeing wood ducks here. There's a bunch which won't be till April. And so it's not as if everyone's all together. The same thing with the amphibians. When are they crossing the road? Well, the spotted salamanders, the wood frogs, and the peepers, they're now.
Over and then
Bullfrogs, they're going
no,
to
I'm
be.
gonna bring it over.
Just going to mute you if you don't mind. You saw your first red-winged blackbird today. Great. It's great to have them back. Let me see. Takes me a second. Okay. Um, yeah, it's a pleasure that like no red-winged blackbirds, and then where there was a million red-winged blackbirds. So we are already in spring, even if it certainly feels like it and will feel like it tomorrow, but the migrants are already coming back. And so let's talk about how eagles fit into this mix. First off, this never happened. All right. So dinosaurs never saw eagles. So no dinosaur ever saw a hawk and eagle. They are much more recent. So if we were to look at the history of the world, the last 500 million years, we split into eras. The dinosaurs were in the green era that ended 65 million years ago. All hawks and eagles are from the red era, more recent than that. All right, so these are newer birds. The old dinosaur birds, well, they were weird. They had teeth. They had long, grasping fingers. So, there were birds way in the dinosaur age, but um, they were new. And it wasn't until more recently that the bird family tree, which had ducks and like ostriches as early offshoots. They wouldn't give us the raptors, the birds of prey, until after the dinosaurs were extinct. Now, in that, all right, so here you can say the order which has the sea eagles comes later. Now, I just said the word sea eagle. So here's a weird thing, and this annoys me far more than it annoys you, but I'm sure it will annoy you too. There are certain words that don't work anymore. All right. So if we were to talk about songbirds, the one that annoys a lot of people is tanager, like scarlet tanagers. You love scarlet tanagers. I love scarlet tanagers. Technically, they're not tanagers. They're cardinals. All right. So the tanagers, that's more of a South American bird group, primarily. So, we use a word, but it might not reflect a real biological fact. Same with eagle. All right. So you'd say, oh, look, here's a golden eagle, a close relative of the bald eagles. Yes, no. Bald eagles are more closely related biologically to red-tailed hawks than they are golden eagles. We use the word eagle just to mean a big hawk. All right. And the huge group of hawks throughout the world, that has split into several families, they have produced big forms of themselves multiple times. And these big forms aren't necessarily all that closely related. So golden eagles are sometimes called booted eagles because they have feathers going down their legs. They are not closely related to a bald eagle. A bald eagle would be one of the sea eagles. All right. So just so you know. How do you identify them? Well, I know a lot of you would say, well, the white head, the white tail, so striking. But as we're going to see, the immatures are mostly brown. They don't get the white head and tails till about 4 to 5 years of age. So one of the ways you can tell them is that they're big birds. And they are one of the largest birds. Okay, they're not as large as condors. All right, so these are North America's largest birds, and here are some condors in the Grand Canyon. Um, Bald eagles are a little bit bigger than golden. All right, so golden eagles are big birds, but bald eagles are a little bit bigger. And so just the size alone can tell you that it's an eagle. But this is where we get a little annoying. I can't tell you how big an eagle would be because it depends. First of all, females are bigger than males. That's typical in the raptors. The opposite is true in many other groups. So, for example, in the ducks and geese, males are a little bigger than the females, but in the birds of prey, the females are larger than the males. So I can't tell you how large an eagle is because a female could be 25% larger. If you think about bears, we have bears in this area, but when you go up to Canada, the bears just get bigger. Canadian bears and Alaskan bears are just bigger than our bears. The same thing with eagles. The farther north you go, the bigger the eagles get. The farther south you go, the smaller they get. So our eagles are bigger than like an eagle you might see in Florida or in Louisiana or the Carolinas. But Alaskan eagles are even bigger. So if you were to ask about wingspan, because North America is a big place, the wingspans vary. Uh, the females can get wingspans of like 6 feet into 7, like around here they could, but up in Alaska, 7.5 up to 8. I think the largest have had wingspans of 8 feet. That wouldn't be here. That would be one of the northern eagles here. You can see there's a bit of a range, 10 to 14 pounds to 8 to 10 pounds in males. So their huge size is certainly helps you distinguish them. Their long wings, like if you were to picture a hawk wings just don't stretch out from the body to the same length that the eagles do. And then bills too, like bird bills, especially birds of prey. I'm sorry, there's someone. I'm just going to try to mute someone who might be making a little bit of sound. Okay. Um, that's a big bill. And the reasons for the bills, I'm sure there's a lot. One of the reasons as we get into courtship, they like to rub each other's bills and stroke each other's bills. And so having a role in courtship, that might, there might be an advantage to a large bill. So these are huge, huge birds, which can live decades, commonly 20 to 30 years. And if humans help out, I think maybe like 30 into even 50 years. But when they live in the wild, often mating for life, this is a significant investment. I'm not trying to put anyone down, all right, but like, let's face it, some of these birds, their pair bonds last far longer than a lot of marriages. So, respect for all of uh, the birds here. Okay, what do they eat? Well, they are mainly fishing eagles, as is much of their group. So fish can represent, up to 90% of their diets. It varies. In wild, you never want to pigeonhole yourself and you say like, bald eagles eat this or bald eagles act like this because there's variation. So what kind of fish do you eat? Well, where do you live? All right, Alaska, salmon are everywhere, so that's going to be an important part of the diet. Down south, catfish, other species of fish, so it varies. One of the big things in our area, a lot of people don't follow this as well. Birds migrate. We know that. Fish migrate. Lots of them do. And lots of them grow up in the ocean, but then they decide, hey, it's springtime. I'm going to swim up the Hudson River. I'm going to swim up the Delaware River. I'm going to mate and lay my eggs so that, my young can live in a safe, the Delaware River is safer than the ocean is as far as number of predators and like sharks and all of that. So every spring, just this mass of fish comes up the Delaware River. If you're a fisher person, you can look online and you say, ooh, the shad run along the Delaware. It's in Easton now. A little bit later, ooh, it's in Stroudsburg now. And then like you can follow the fish. And if you're in a boat or a kayak, and you'll see them, you'll see like all of these fish all swimming upstream. And it's exhausting to swim upstream from the Atlantic Ocean to the upper portions of the Delaware Hudson. And so a lot of times they die along the way, swimming against currents, especially once the water gets high. I mean, look how high the water is. There are fish swimming against that. All right, so that's streaming. So they get here, a lot of them die. They hope after laying their eggs. And then they just float on the surface just as these eagles are trying to raise their young. So for eagles, this is like heaven. There's just all these big dead fish floating on the surface of the water just at the time they have to feed their young. So things like shad and a couple of other species can swim up the river. So fish are important. That being said, eagles eat a lot of stuff, right? And so they can eat a lot of waterfowl. So this was in Goshen, an Audubon sanctuary there, and I had a trail camera. And I noticed, oh, wow, there's an eagle there. And I look closer, I'm like, and there's a duck. All right, so that eagle is going after the duck. And I hate to do this. You're going to be so mad at me. Ah, they fly off screen. I don't know how it ends. I know you're going to be in suspense. Did the duck get away? Did the eagle get the duck? And I'm sorry, I can't tell you. But I have seen there are ducks called diving ducks. And I'm thinking, oh, sure, they dive so that they can feed on, like fish and invertebrates and get plant. But they also feed to get away of the eagles. Because I've seen a bald eagle just circling overhead and going after the duck. The duck goes underwater, but it can only stay underwater so long. And so it has to come back up. But by then the eagle circled around, and this goes on for a long time. So eagles will eat ducks. They can eat other small mammals. I hate to tell this story, but first of all, it's a story, so I heard it. It must be true. But I'm pretty sure it is. There was an eagle cam that one kindergarten class would watch first thing in the day until a parent eagle brought a house cat to its young. And then I think that was the end of the eagle cam, but I think there was also some counseling for some of the kindergartners, etc. So eagles are big predators. And so what do they eat? Well, if you've got a 7-foot wingspan, anything you want, in your environment. So muskrats, rabbits, squirrels, they can go after baby birds like young great blue herons, even an occasional adult great blue heron. All right. So they are quite varied. And I will mention, because this is relevant to things like the avian flu, which is concerning us so much now, they also eat carrion. All right. In fact, in earlier centuries, golden eagles and bald eagles in winter, if you lived in the West, there was a lot of dead bison. And so eagles eating carrion of bison was a big thing. Okay. So if you're going to be this big, obviously that affects flight a little bit because it's just hard to steer if you've got 7 feet of wings. So when we start talking about nests, notice that they're typically in pine trees. Pine trees often have more space between their branches than you would see in oaks, etc. Because if you had a 7-foot wingspan, you wouldn't want to be, when I walk through the woods, there's things slapping my face and scratching me, etc. So if you were flying, the same thing would appear would also apply. Also, you want to be able to take off. And if you're young, and if you have a nest, obviously the young, they're not good at flying yet. All right, so pine trees with lots of spaces between their branches are just really good for for this. Another thing that we often see is if it's warm, and there's a temperature variation, they can get thermal updrafts. All raptors take advantage of this. Like if you've got huge wingspans, you look at that and you say, "Oh, I love it." Why? Because you got rock, you got forest, you got the Delaware River. The rock heats up fast, the forest slower, the Delaware River even slower. So now you've got an uneven thermal landscape, some areas hotter than others. And so what happens then is now you get these currents of hot air rising. So these are vultures, but eagles will do the same thing. Now you can just kind of sit on these currents of air which are going up. As the rocks are heating up faster, that hot air rises, cool air comes in from the surrounding area to fill it in. And in autumn migration is a little more intense than that of spring. In spring, it's kind of more spread out. All right, whereas in autumn, you just have more birds, especially the raptors, migrating in a little less time. And so you can see things like this. Look, there's this column of air going up. Now, a lot of these are vultures, but there was an eagle in here. All right. So one of the things I always try to do is when I think I know what the birds are, I look anyway. A lot of birds will say that. Look at every bird. Because I would say, vulture, 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 vulture. But if you look really close, you're like, oh no, there's an immature eagle in there, which is black. Or like the ducks. Whenever I see a bunch of ducks take off, I always try to take pictures because you're like, mallards. I've seen a million mallards. But then you look in the middle, you're like, ooh, blue-winged teal in the middle of the mallard. I would have missed that one. So, even groups of birds that you think it's fun to look at them. So, in that group was this little guy. No, this little guy, which is an immature eagle. So you might not have noticed it because it doesn't have the white head and tail, but the immatures don't. So that was in that group. But let's talk more about this time of year. So we just passed Valentine's Day, and last year it was Valentine's Day. I started seeing a whole bunch of eagles. So I thought I would start my yearly story on Valentine's Day. So here's a local eagle last year on Valentine's Day. What is it doing? And the answer, we don't know. In that, eagles are here all year round. Does that mean that that bird laid eggs here, all right, and is a permanent resident of our area? It could. So this could be a year-round resident of our area. But another possibility is our summer eagles went to Virginia and North Carolina, but Canada's eagles came here. So even if you see an eagle in the exact same spot every day of the year, doesn't have to be the same eagle. Our eagles can migrate south. Canada's eagles can migrate south to here, right? And it could vary from year to year. So for example, I think, because I know this tree, is at the Bashkill, we can talk about it later. I think these are the parents of the nest, which is right over here, and they decided to stay last winter. That's what I think, but I don't know that. All right. So, those eagles could have traveled. So when you're in February, you see eagles in our area, but I'm not quite sure what they're doing. I'm not sure if they will breed here or whether this is just their wintering grounds, and it could vary from year to year. Now, some Februaries, like this one, are colder than the last 2 years. So a lot of the water is frozen. You can still hunt for geese. You can still hunt for dead geese. And in this year of avian flu, that's a problem because eagles can get avian flu from the dead geese that they eat. We'll get back to that. But if they're going to eat fish, then they have to go to where the water isn't frozen. And there are some places where it never is. There's some places on the Hudson. There's the Rio Dam, about 40 minutes from here. And there's a place on the Delaware River where the Lackawaxen Stream comes in. And I just mentioned that because if you say, it is so cold, I see no birds. But there are a couple places where there's still open water. And if you go there, you're not only going to see eagles, you're going to see a lot of them. Because if they want to fish, that's the only place that they can go. All right. So, even in the middle of winter, you can find birds and some good bird outings if you want. All right, so here are some eagles there. All right. And then comes late February into March. And I led a walk for eagles yesterday at the Bashkill. And we were talking about last year when I did the same walk. All right. And last year, I think it was last year. Not, it was 2 years ago. I'm sorry. I'm getting old. My years blend together. We not only saw pairs of eagles right around the eagles' nests, which we'll be talking about soon. But see that? Look at that. Eagle, 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 eagle. All right. And then when they took off, all right, then there were a number of them. All right. We said like there's like 11 to 14 eagles in frame at one time. That's insane. All right. So March is a weird time because maybe they're coming back to our area and this they're picking like, here's my territory where I'm going to lay my eggs. Or maybe they're just passing through and they're going to go up to Canada, but they're hungry. And they're like, if I see, a duck, or some fish or anything, I'll eat that um, along the way. So it's all, when you go out in nature, you're not always going to see everything, and there are some slow days. But then you're surprised, like you say, oh, like it's cold, the water's still frozen. I'm not really going to see much of anything, and then you see 14 eagles. So that's kind of exciting. But this is the time of year where mating is in the air. Now, if they haven't already mated, um, then this is the time for courtship. Now, yesterday when I gave this talk, there were a lot of kids involved. So I'm assuming that a lot of you are more responsible. I had to give them some warnings, but just in case you're not, all right, for those of you at home, please, no one try this at home, okay? When eagles court, what they do is the couples will hang out together and there's like nice romantic things where they'll make vocalizations together, they'll stroke each other's bills and chests with their bills, etc. But then they do the cartwheel display. Okay, what is that? They'll fly really high, they will lock talons and they will hurtle towards the ground only to let go at the last minute so that they don't die. Now, we recommend you not try that with your partner at home. And even the eagles, sometimes, as you might guess, there are pairs that let go just a little too late, and that ends tragically. I want to show you a picture from it's like not quite a month ago yet. I was at the Bashkill. So when I say Bashkill and when I say that the Goshen uh, sanctuary at 6.5 Station, part of it is and forgive me, I hate to single anybody out, but like, oh, you young people. Like, when I was your age and I wanted to see an eagle, there were none to be seen. All right. Like, there were no eagles east of the Mississippi River, or practically none. Like, I didn't see my first eagle in the wild until I was 19. All right. And then it was like we went out with a birding group and it was like this little black dot in the distance. And everyone came home like, I saw an eagle. I was like, I saw a black dot. But in any case, and now they're ever like we saw 14 like in the same camera frame. It is such a different environment. And so when I say like here, this is 20 minutes away. All right, so you can go to the Bashkill 20 minutes this way. We get eagles at the 6.5 Station sanctuary. It's 10 minutes up the road. Where just seeing eagles was impossible when I was young. So this is impressive. So this is real local. Here are two immature eagles. We'll talk about the coloration. The females are bigger. So my guess is she's the female. You can see she is a little bit bigger than here. And then they start doing this. So then you're asking, what are they doing? Well, tell you what, let's tell the happy version first. So even though they're maybe not courting yet, I'm making this up. I don't know this to be a fact, but this is just me making stuff up. If I was going to go on a date and grab talons and hurtle towards the ground, that would be something I would want to practice, at least a little first. So juveniles, they do some of the adult behaviors, even though they're not courting yet. They will show some of the behaviors that they'll show when they're a little older, and it's a way of practicing. And I think we can agree that that type of activity is nice to get a little muscle memory going for you. So this might have been just that. Here it looks to be a male and a female, and they're practicing that. Another thing, and a gentleman yesterday had a very interesting story where just recently he found a dead eagle floating in the Bashkill when he was out kayaking. He sent it off to the state to analyze. They had did an autopsy on it, and they said that the heart had talons in it. All right, and so we'll be getting to that in a second. Eagles can go after each other as well. All right, and so I don't think that's what's happening here. They look like they were playing nicely and they flew off together, etc. Not like territorial where they separated. So this looks like a practicing of courtship. But once again, I don't know what they were thinking. So this is the time of year where they will court. And so if you see eagles, you often see pairs. We saw a pair yesterday. Their bills are pretty big, and Their bill is important in courtship. They use it and they stroke each other, etc. So, at some, oh, I'm sorry, there's some chat things I'm missing. All right, eagle season, no duck season. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, eagles do eat dead deer, and you can do eagles eat other adult eagles? I do not think that is common, but since they're predators that are very big, if one was in a territorial thing and actually killed the other one, I wouldn't be surprised if they then made use of, the nutrients there. But I think that would be exceedingly rare, and I've never heard of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. All right. So at a certain time, they say, all right, nesting time is upon us. So yesterday, we were at looking at that nest and another nest. And they're big. In fact, they are the biggest. Bald eagle nests are the biggest nests in the bird among birds. And so they need tall trees, all right, because that's a big nest. And every year they make it bigger, all right. And by location, they have a territory. So they would like it to be near water where they can fish. All right, a good place of food, nice visibility. All right, so locations are important. Here, the seagull at the Bashakil, the nest it's using is just to the left. All right, and so it has to fit birds. I mean, you've got two big birds, and then they can have two, three, and rarely four young. So obviously, these need to be big nests. Now, yeah, so notice that in these pine trees, there's space between the branches. Unlike, if you were a huge bird, you would never fly into like a maple tree. You'd be getting whacked in the face with branches all the time. How big? Well, they keep getting bigger, and there are the famous ones because every year they add to it. All right, so that's one of the things, and this is the time of year, late February to March. That could vary. The past 2 years, it was very mild winter, so I took some of the pictures you're about to see in a late February. But because the water was frozen, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of what happened late February last 2 years is happening in early March these 2 years. They come and they fix up the nest. They add branches to it every year. They'll add grasses. So before eggs are laid, they fix it up. We could laugh about this for a little bit, but the way this is done is the males will search long and hard to find the perfect branch that would add to the nest. The female sits at the nest, and when the male comes with his perfect branch, she judges. If she doesn't like this branch, tosses it right over, and male has to go out and find another one. But more branches are added. And if eagle's nests are used year after year for decades, they can be 18 square feet. They can be 10 feet high, 8 feet across, weigh 2 tons. So it's not that uncommon that at some point the weight of the nest will bring the branch down or perhaps the tree down, as you might imagine if we start talking about nests which now weigh tons. There's a great Eagle Fest at Croton Point. I'll show you some pictures of that in a little bit that they do in February. I think they had to cancel this year because it was really bad weather. That's what I think. But in any case, one of the cool things, it was a lot of fun. They actually made an eagle's nest on the ground for kids. And then when you got to see kids like going in an eagle's nest, like that's how big they are. Like it was just a great idea for the nature center to kind of like get all these sticks and make one on the ground. So kudos to them. So here I was at the Bashakil. I was taking pictures of what is the eagle carrying? It's carrying grass. And that's not uncommon. It's fixing up its nest. I was at a meeting yesterday, and the president of the Bashakil Area Association was talking about eagles landing in her yard and stealing hay from her horses. They're fixing up their nest. So this is the time of year when that is done. So here's an eagle at the Bashakil going to fix up its nest, and soon eggs will be laid. All right. Once again, this will vary. So down south, it's warmer. Eggs may have already been laid. Up north, not quite yet. All right. Right in this area, I'm sure that last year, I think by now there were eagles on the nest, so eggs were laid. I didn't see any. I'll get to that in a second. So it can vary a little from year to year, about the size of a tennis ball. Now, I want to stress that a tennis ball, the hatchling that comes out was that size. Birds are full size when they leave the nest. So The tennis ball that hatches in March will have a 7-foot wingspan in June. That is a lot of growth that has to happen in just a couple of months. In fact, the fastest rate of growth that we know of in birds. All right, so a lot of growth here. 1 to 3 eggs are common. 2 is the most common. Sometimes 4 are laid. Okay, I'll be talking about size a lot with the nestlings. They are laid a couple days apart, and that means that if your egg was laid first, you're bigger than your siblings. Now, being female will also then make you a bigger still, and that's going to matter because uh, the biggest eaglets get fed first. And if food is scarce, and if you're the third egg that was laid, you may not do well, all right, because your bigger siblings, they get food first and you're no match for them. You might not make it this year if it's not a great year for food. So size matters at the nest, and that affects the eggs. Now, just kind of like a shout out here, I'm taking this images through a spotting scope at the Bashikil, and I mention it because we hope that we'll get situations like this. Unfortunately, the past couple years have had eagles fighting with each other, so we haven't had the nest success that we have in the past because the eagles keep going after each other's kids. But what we will do starting in April, then through June, is we will have volunteers, if you're interested, come with scopes. And we just stand there and we're kind of, fonts of information. And people are walking the trails. And as they do, we say, hey, would you like to see some bald eagle fledglings in the nest? Come on over. And for a lot of people, this is the first time they've ever seen such things. And it's a really rewarding experience. So if this is something that you might be interested in, feel free to contact the Mamakating Environmental Education Center, or a week from Saturday, March 21st, is when we're going to be having our training at Meek at the Bashikil at 9:30 in the morning. So we'd love to have you help for a couple of sessions if you'd like. All right. So then what happens, and if you're like one of the volunteers or if you hike along the trails of the Bashkill, you can see this happening week by week. You can say, oh, look, like I see tiny little heads poking up. The eagles are so small. But then you come back a week later, they're a little bit bigger. You can actually watch this process because, like I said, weekends from 8 to 4, we'll have scopes on the nest. They're completely dark when they're young. We'll be looking at their color changes over age in just a little bit. And the biggest ones will grow fastest because they get the most food. Once again, if you were the third, you might not make it. Right? And so here they are, they're getting bigger. And you'll see some more videos like this because by, late May into June, you're going to try to fly. Now, just think about that. If you've got like a 6 to 7 foot wingspan, all right, and if you've never flown before and there's branches in your way, like this could go badly. So for a long time, you can just watch the eagles at the nest and you'll see them practicing, building up the strength in those muscles. And then by the end, you can actually see them like just take off just a little bit, which is good. Once again, if you're that big, you don't want to be your first leap out of the tree, something that you've never practiced before, so the more that they can practice, the better for them. So here you can see the green increasing around them. So obviously here we are in May getting into June. So by now, they're getting big. In fact, we know that the adult female is bigger than the adult male. By the time these are getting ready to leave the nest, they're actually a little bit bigger than they will be when they're older. So the yearlings, their wings are just a little bit longer, which makes it a little easier for them to soar, but it's harder for them to steer. So by this time, the father is the smallest thing at the nest. All right, so the female's much bigger than he is, and now the chicks are bigger than he is as well. And you had the great story. I'm sorry, you had at the beginning where there was a great story earlier. I'll just repeat it if you don't mind, because from that vantage point, I just know that it's hard for the people at home to hear the sound. Someone was telling the story where unfortunately there was a female eagle that was thought was hit by a car. And maybe a couple of years ago from the same nest, a female eagle didn't make it. And so for 2 years now, it looks like the male successfully raised young on its own. But there was an instance where there was another female eagle that when the male came to the nest, she took the food that he had. And that happens here. Like if you're the male, all right, the nest used to be a place where like everyone could feed. You'd bring the fish and like you'd get a little, everyone would get a little. But then by the end, you're the smallest thing there. Everyone else is bigger and stronger and rips the food away from you. If you don't have food with you, they're ripping at your feet. So that's unpleasant. So the males, they'll try to like eat like somewhere else on another tree nearby because they just can't compete with these larger birds here. So it's fun to, if you visit the Bashkill, look, you can see like, oh, they're getting bigger. I can see them moving now. That was rare here. We got a couple more things. Is there any, oh, okay. Okay, great points here. So yeah, so let's say a few things now about predators. Eagles are living at the tops of trees, big predatory birds, but that doesn't mean that they're in the clear. There are things like bobcats, which can get up and find them. A lot of birds eat eggs. So ravens, if a nest is unattended, ravens, even crows, blue jays would go after smaller eggs. But even some of the woodpeckers, they'll go after birds' eggs and they'll go after nestlings. All right, so even though it's not most common, herons can eat nestlings. Great blue herons can eat baby birds. Woodpeckers can eat baby birds. And so that's why we want the eagles to stay on the nest. And at first, they almost always should. The later, as the chicks get older, there'll be a little more time where they spend some time away. And thank you for the point on the great Hornell. And I'm sorry, I have to find the chat again. And if Prabita, that was you. Thank you so very much. Oh, no, that was owner. Oh, so Barbara, thank you. Thank you for pointing out the great horned owls for the way. Lately, because eagles had been protected, they were removed from the endangered species list because of how well they're doing. They would surround trees with, please stay away from this area. This is an endangered species area. Because while some birds are adapting to being in human habitations, like peregrine falcons can nest on skyscrapers and on bridges. Eagles are shyer. They don't like to be near people. So if you go near them, they'll fly away. But now their nest is unattended. And that's when a nest predator might be more likely to have success. Also, if it's cold, this happens where as climate changes, like a February, you could have a warm spell and birds might think like, oh, spring is here, but it's February. Like even though it's a warmer winter than usual, you can still get cold Marches. And a couple years ago, there were eagles sitting on nests thinking that we think they laid eggs, but then there was a cold spell and then no eagles on the nest. We think that the eggs froze. All right, and so quote what are called false springs, where it gets warm all of a sudden, but there's still like cold winter ahead. If birds lay eggs too early, they might not survive. So and so then we also don't want to scare adults off of the nest because people are messing around, because then obviously that's less warmth that the eggs are getting. But yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. So well, in that they have control of when they migrate to this area. They have control of when like the courtship occurs and when they would mate. So it wouldn't be, there are some animals like, so for example, um, this is a little bit of an aside. Here are eagles in May while I go off on a tangent. If you have like a turtle in a tank for 7 years all by itself, a female turtle, you can say, okay, I'll never have any eggs. And all of a sudden she lays eggs. And you're like, she's been alone for 7 years. What happened? And you realize, oh, she can store sperm. She mated 7 years ago. She stored sperm, and then she just decided, okay, let's get pregnant now. So what you said, like there is some of that. This would be more the timing of like courtship and mating. And so if you find eagles in this area, if it's been a warm winter, they might be the ones who are nesting in this area. If it's a colder winter, they might not be coming back until March. They fix up the nest for a little bit, they would mate later. And so they would be responding a little bit to the environmental cues for them. So here we are in May, and if you're on the Delaware, that's a great place to go looking for eagles. You can see the eagles' heads popping up. And then June, this is it. All right, usually by mid-June in our area, they are leaving the nest. And so here is a Bashkill nest last year. And the eagle's practicing. It's getting a little air underneath its feet when it takes off. You can see how big its wings are already because it'll leave the nest. If it's not leaving, I'm not trying to give anyone parenting advice, but the Eagles parents are showing a little bit of tough love because they might like say, all right, I'll bring you food. Here's a fish, but I'm not going to take it to the nest. I'm going to take it to this branch nearby the nest and kind of like, nudge you to try to start spreading your wings and to fly after that. Some baby eagles do fall on the ground. All right, their first flight is not successful, but the parents will feed it on the ground and kind of encourage it to try to, try again, etc. So that's not necessarily the end there. So here's just you can actually see it like start to get air underneath. And then comes the day when, like at the Bashakil, if we've had a good year and there's a nest with eagles, we've been watching it every day, and then there's nothing. Like once the eagles have fledged, they don't have to come back to the nest. And so, putting the scope on the nest day after day, that was the thing. And now, no, there's nothing there. You're just going to see a pile of sticks from this point on to the rest of the summer. So you can see it's starting to get a little air under. Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And I think, I have a little, all right, I could hunt around. Let me just describe it because I don't think I can find it. Where do they go? Well, it varies. So eagles, and this is true of other birds too, just because you fledge out of the nest, that doesn't mean your parents are done taking care of you. Like for a lot of birds, there's what we call teenagers. All right. So they're independent to a large degree, but not 100% independent yet. So they could hang out together and their parents could still occasionally bring them food while they're learning to supplement and feed on their own. So that's common. Or one just says, I'm off on my own and it takes off, and that's the last you see of it. So it's an individual thing. So there could be parental care through August, or, come June into July, one of them just takes off. And they band eagles so they can watch where do they go. Um, I have a map here. I don't know if I could find it quickly. It depends on the wind. All right. So like if they say like at this time of year, the wind was going this way, then a lot of the eaglets that fledged that year, they went that way. And so they're just going to kind of, explore there. And so here you can see this is clearly an eagle that hatched this year. So this is August, or maybe it's in the middle called June. All right, so maybe that's still June or late June. But you can see how dark it was. All right, so when you just see a chocolate brown eagle, you can say you hatched this year. We know that the matures are going to have the white head and tail. That's what we expect. But then there's all these things in the middle. So like, what is that? Now, a lot of people wouldn't realize that that's an eagle. All right. But it's such a big bird. There's very few things it could be. Vultures can be big, but vultures often fly with their wings in a V. That's a straight line. So that's kind of a key that it's not a vulture. So I'm thinking eagle, and you're thinking, is it a hawk? But hawks aren't that big, but the wings are so darn long. All right, hawks just don't have wings which are that long. Bill, look at that bill. Like no hawk has a bill like that. So there are subtle cues, but I'm sure a lot of us, myself included, I'm sure we see eagles that we don't think are eagles, that we think they're vultures or whatever. So as adults, they're going to get the white head, but I just want to point something out. This bird's probably 4 years old. All right. Why do I say that? Can you see there's still a little brown in here? So even though it has the white head, still a little brown in here. If you look closely, getting the full white head, it is a process. And by 4 years, they're close to that. All right. At first, they have a darker bill, darker eyes, and you saw in the adult there that by the time they're adults, very light yellow. All right, so here's the chocolate brown of a new one. Now, if you were to say, all right, like what bird is that? Well, now we're looking at a bird that's like a year and a half old. It's got, some lighter colors on it. Notice the iris, not yellow yet. Notice the bill, not yellow yet. So it doesn't look like it's going to. And we're going to see it slowly start to change. All right, so here is at the Bashakil. Look at that. Like that's a weird looking bird. It's got a lot of white, but it's clearly not an osprey. So that's an immature bald eagle. Now we're looking at like 2 or 3 years for that one. All right, we got the great horned owl. Are there ever albino eagles? I don't know. I would say, yeah, so albinism is a mutation. So mutations happen. So if you can't make pigment, you would be an albino eagles. I don't know of any, but I'm sure that there are. Another thing that's not albino is leucistic. So you could have a variant, just like we have dogs, and some dogs vary and like they've got this crazy variation going on. With coloration, you could not be an albino. You could have like brown or colored parts, but still you are mostly white, more than is usual. That's not albino, that's what's called leucistic. Right now in the Warwick area, I think it's been there for years. I think I've seen it unless there's two. There's a leucistic red-tailed hawk that people often see. So they see just this white bird, but it's a big red-tailed hawk. So I wouldn't be surprised if in addition to albinos, there are um, leucistic birds as well. And I just know anecdotally, like, so for example, and that was a mature that just flew off. Um, I know of the leucistic red-tailed hawk, but you can have whiter versions of lots of birds. So here, once again, we're looking at like 2 and 3 year old birds. So a lot of white, even white on the tail, but can you see there's also a lot of brown on the tail? All right, by the time you get to 4 years old, all right, so look there, we're starting to get yellow on the beak. The eye is lighter, a little more white. Now, if you saw this bird, I'm sure you would say what I did. I'm like, "Ew, like, what's wrong with this eagle? Like, it looks filthy, to be honest. Is it okay? Is it sick?" And then you realize, no, it's 4 years old. All right. So it's almost got a white head. It's almost got a white tail, but there's still a lot of brown in there. And so, you may see eagles in various color hues here, and you might see more eagles than you thought you would. And there are places I love kayak in the Delaware. You can tube the Delaware. And like, I went, most of my early life and never saw an eagle. All right. And now you can like see, easily on a good day, one per mile. You're like, oh, there's another eagle, there's another eagle. And it's such a thrill that the Eagles have bounced back to um, that point. All right, so we're winding down, and I have just had such a wonderful time talking about Eagles, and now's the time to depress everybody because it's not all good news. Uh, there are threats for eagles, and I just start off with, obviously we care a lot about eagles. In fact, we've used eagles to represent our country more than any other bird, and just you can see how old these coins are, where like just it goes back all of these different. We've said, if there's ever a natural symbol of who we aspire to be, let's pick um, the eagle. They eat ducks. I have to listen to this video. I forget why I put the ducks there. And so I talk about this. So there are threats. It's not the way it used to be in the old days where you could hunt them. All right. In fact, you could hunt them. In fact, the state could pay you a bounty. Like the more eagles you kill, that's more eagles in your pocket, etc. So that was banned with the Migratory Bird Act and then the Bald Eagle Act, which followed. But we still have indiscriminate shooting. Like there are still individuals who are like, oh, someone goes to jail, they shot, 40 eagles in Alaska. Or I heard someone comment, once again, I heard this, so it must be true, that like if you see eagles like that strike power lines or strike a windmill or something, a lot of them actually have shot in them as well. All right, so that was like what ultimately did their demise, but there are still individuals who shoot eagles. But that's on the rarer side. If we were to look at, okay, here's part two. Okay, but yeah, if we were to look at threats, one of the big threats is chemicals. All right, and you say, oh right, yeah, I studied that in school. Like DDT, it made their eggshells really thin, and there were things like PCBs. Well, there are still chemicals. So let me just kind of go through the gamut. First, we kill animals. All right. And I like if I have mice in my house, I try to get them with a trap first. But like if mice are going to wreak havoc with your house or like go into your car's engine and chew all the wires, like you as the homeowner, you say this mouse might die. But then we often forget, I know I do, that you put poison out for a mouse and it like eats the poison and then it like goes into your house and dies. But then like an owl or something can go after it, a hawk, and so now you not only poison the mouse, but you poison the bird of prey, which will eat it. And in the same way, if you decide you want to kill some animal like coyotes or whatever, you can poison a deer carcass and say, "Aha, I'll kill the coyotes." But eagles, they also eat carrion. So you've not just killed a coyote, you've killed a bald eagle. Immatures, especially, aren't that good at fishing yet, so they're more likely to incorporate some carrion into their diet. Okay. Other threats to bald eagles, I'm just going to give a whole bunch of them. We'll get back to the chemicals. Uh, we're changing habitat. I mean, there used to be all these great places to find fish, but we humans, we like water too for recreation, to put houses around. Eagles don't like living around people. So you look here, that would be less of a bald eagle habitat. All right, they like more solitary areas. Look here, we've cut down big trees. They have, if your nest is going to be 2 tons, you need big trees. And we humans, if we're going to make more farmland, we have changed the habitat uh, there. So Great Lakes would be a great place to go fishing, but like once again, also Great Lakes are great places for human habitation. There are power lines that birds can fly into. There are windmills that birds can fly into. So there are all sorts of things. And once again, I will get to chemicals. You may remember this day. I do. There were wildfires in Canada. And I said, oh, yeah, yeah, it looks a little hazy. Well, I'm going to go out kayaking anyway. I didn't realize how bad it was. It was horrible, the breathing there. Like, people suffer. Emergency rooms always skyrocket when there's a lot of particulate pollution in the air. So I kayaked a little and I said, you know what, I'm going to call it quits. I'm going to go back in my house. But the eagles didn't have that option. They kept breathing there, and there's an eagle's nest where young were being raised. So air pollution clearly affects them. Okay. DDT, if you remember, this was what an insecticide, which was very widely used, and it was once thought to be one of the greatest chemicals ever. Now, I don't like DDT. I'm an environmentalist, but I do also want to be honest with you. Back in the day, people had horrible trouble with diseases spread by mosquitoes. I mean, there was like malaria, yellow fever, etc. And so DDT was praised. Like, look at all the mosquitoes it kills. Now, I obviously being worried about nature, like there's a downside to that. But people in the past, they thought this was great, less diseases. The danger that it faces is something called biomagnification, because if you put these chemicals, they stick in living tissues, especially fat. So if you've got pollution in water, there's a little bit of DDT in the water, okay? But if you're going to feed on the water, like this little tiny animal, it's a filter feeder, the pesticides get stuck in its body. So the levels of pesticide in its body are higher than the surrounding water, right? And then if you go bigger still into like water bugs that eat those little microscopic animals, their level of pesticides will be higher still. And then if you go into the fish, the little fish, higher still. You go into the big fish, higher still. And then if you go in the things that eat the big fish, higher still. So pesticides like DDT and the PCBs I'll talk about in a second are always bad, but they are worse for the things at the tops of food chains. Now, this is an eagle talk, and I'm saying this because we care about the eagles. But let's be honest, all right? We eat the fish too, all right? So Audubon like is big on stressing this. Like when you let's make this a good habitat, let's make this a pollution-free habitat. That's not only good for wildlife, that's bad, that's good for people. Habitats that are bad for wildlife are often bad for us too. So we don't have to say we're like picking people over animals. Like here, in addition to DDT, we have to worry about the Great Lakes. That's a Great Lake. I know it looks like an ocean, because of the PCBs which were put there. Now, you may not be all that interested because you're thinking DDT, PCBs, those are things of the past. They are inside you right now. These chemicals, they last. They last decades after you stop making them. They're still in the food chain. So eagles are still being affected by pollutants in the past, as are we. I'd like to give a shout out to Croton Point. Shout out to Croton Point. That is a toxic landfill. All right. So New York City's garbage, especially like toxic garbage, went there for years and years and years. But then they decided, you know what? Let's like fix this. So they covered it all over safely, all right, in a way that all of this is contained because the Hudson River is right next to it. So that's this hill that I'm on. What's right next to it is where you see the Bufflehead a second ago. Oh, the duck you saw a minute ago. So here's the Hudson. That's right next to where we are. So this is just crazy. I mean, there's crazy poisons in there, but it's managed. Like, so people go every year and they mow it so the trees don't grow because tree roots would penetrate the lining of this, and that would liberate some of the the PCBs and other chemicals. So I just say this is a beautiful place to bird. It is a beautiful wildlife habitat. All right. And it's because people have said we're going to, consciously limit the spread of pesticides. So we can fix things. And this is just a beautiful thing, like a 40-minute drive from here. That's evidence of that. But PCBs are a problem, as is mercury. When we burn coal, and if you were to look at the city, like how much coal is being burned to light all those lights? A lot. All right. I know coal consumption is going down, but still a lot. That's a lot of mercury which is going into the air. Then there's lead. We have lead, leaching from batteries, et cetera. It's a neurotoxin. There can be other leads like in fishing gear or in lead shot used to kill an animal. And so there's all of these bad things that could be in water. Now let's stop talking about eagles for a second. Let's talk about you. Let's say you catch a fish, all right, and you say, "Ooh, should I eat it?" Well, I don't know. Well, there are actually websites that you can go to, the National EPA, the New York EPA, that tell you about the concerns that might apply to certain water bodies around you. Like, is it safe to eat the fish? So here's the National EPA. Let me go to the state one. And what you'll find is, all right, so here's a fish. Can general population can eat them? Yeah. All right, but in this waterway from here to here, once a month, more than that, you're bad because of PCBs. And you're thinking, wait, PCBs, they were released years ago. Yeah, but they're in the sediment. When we dredge streams, then we like bring it all up again. So even things which were made years ago, here's cadmium, the heavy metal, dioxin, like these are dangerous chemicals. You have to limit your food. Some bottom feeding fish, like this catfish, nobody should eat that fish. All right. And then if you're in certain populations, like if you're pregnant, if you're a child, if you're elderly, if you're immunocompromised, you shouldn't eat any fish from this area. And then you can just keep on going. And I just show, so feel free to just kind of go through this here. Here's all these different waterways you can go county by county in New York State. And you're going to hear, and yeah, there are in our area, don't eat this fish from this pond at all. Fish from here, eat maybe once a month max, etc. So there's dangers to eagles, which are eating this all the time. But then, this affects us as well. Yeah.
What's the thinking behind once a month? PCB staples like that?
They do. But I think the question is, if this is like with all chemicals, there's a risk, but like a lot of things, there's like exposure. Like you can be exposed up to this, more than this much arsenic is considered, toxic and close. So they've said like, here's what we call the risk that we're going to worry about. And if you eat one a month or less, you stay below that line. Once you're eating more than one a month, then you're going above that line. And that's all I know. It would then be specific for each of these versus dioxin versus cadmium versus this. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a more informed answer than that. Mhm. Oh, they do. I have DDT in my body right now. I have PCBs in my body right now. The question then is, what's the level? And the thinking behind this is, if you stay below this level, it's not a level that you're likely to see negative health consequences. But then with all of these like microplastic stuff, like we're doing huge experiments. We don't know. Not only are these in your body right now, they're mixing. Like when you pay for a chemical test to be done, like for safety, it's expensive. So they test for PCBs. They don't test for a little PCB and a little DDT and a little cadmium and a little microplastic. Nobody does that because it's too expensive. So my body is a chemistry experiment. We don't know what happens when you mix all of these things. People have never done that. We've never ingested this level of chemical stuff. We've never seen eagles ingest that stuff. And so we're not quite sure. And so these are, people are studying this for health guidelines, but they may shift it and say, ooh, this is more dangerous than we thought, et cetera. So eagles, just a wonderful success story. When I was, young, my chances of seeing them were like zero. And now they are such a thrill. We were out on a hike yesterday and we saw 5 eagles. One pair, we might have seen a sixth in that we saw an adult outside at the Bashkill, the central nest, but that nest is so deep, there might have been a second parent that was actually on eggs in the nest, and we can't see them until the eggs get a little bit bigger, or the eaglets get a little bit bigger. So just, going out, and it was a great highlight. in addition, because the fog was so dense at the beginning, we couldn't see anything. Like we couldn't see, as some kind of test tube. But then it was a highlight. Like, look, we got on this bird platform, and then we all got the scope on the pair of eagles there, and there's their nest right over there. So just it enriches our lives. So it's great that they've come back, but also it requires our constant surveillance. The Bashakil that I mentioned earlier. Okay. They're constantly looking at, hey, there's a movement to put a development or put an industry here, but what would that do to the aquifer? What would that do to the fresh water? And if, the evidence suggests that this wouldn't be good for the ecosystem, they say, well, we don't, approve of this. Like, how can we maybe get a more environmentally friendly thing here. The Audubon Society, has maintained habitat. Otherwise, there might be, some buildings encroaching on it or some other use of this water drain for agriculture or whatever. But, the Audubon Society has said, like, no, let's keep this wetland as wild. And you could see eagles in Goshen at the Goshen Sanctuary. Probably not because they're fishing for fish, although there are some big carp there. More because they're going after the waterfowl, and that's what I've seen there. And you can belong to these. And so, if you value this, just by going out and enjoying nature, but you can certainly join these organizations, which all around us are helping to preserve eagles and their habitat. If you were really, really interested, once again, on Saturday the 21st, there will be a training for volunteers at the Mamakating Environmental Education Center for the Nature Watch program, where if it's a good year, and the last thing I'll say is why it might not be a good year. We'll have volunteers with scopes so that all hikers by can see eaglets grow up. And now you've spread the joy of watching eagles to others. Just so you know, the little 90-second drama of the Bashakil is, for years and years, this was like one of the oldest nests we were getting data on. So just great, great, great. Bashakil is a great habitat. Maybe too great, because then there was a second eagle's nest on the other side of Haven Road. So now we got two, they're like 2 miles apart. And then this nest decided, ooh, I want to move to this side of Haven Road. And then a third nest came here, and now you've got 3 eagles' nest within 1.5 miles, and that's too many eagles. And so now they are territorial birds that then go after each other. 2 years ago, we think that these guys, no, 3 years ago, that these guys went after these guys and killed some of the eaglets in their nest. For the past 2 years ago, these guys in the center nest, they went after these guys. And so there were 3 sets of adults on nest. So we thought we're going to get all these eagles. We won't know what to do. We'll be looking at so many eagles. But then there was only one central nest that had 1 eaglet that fledged that year. Last year, no eaglets fledged. We started off the year with 3 nests real close to each other that all had eagles sitting on the nest. We're like, this is going to be a good year. And then all of a sudden there were none. And we don't know what happened, but once again, we suspect that eagle on eagle aggression. And this year, the fact that so many Canada geese are dying of avian flu, and eagles eat them and can get avian flu themselves as a result. We're not quite sure what we're going to see, but once again, that's in part science and observing nature. You're not sure what you're going to see. That's why we watch. Thank you so very much for coming. I hope you get out to enjoy the wonderful spring birds which are coming back to our area, including the bald eagles. All right. So if anyone, oh yeah, great. Oh, here's Charlotte. Yes, thank you, Charlotte. Here's details in the chat on the Nature Watch training. And once again, it's a great program. And if you don't want to volunteer, then maybe take on a weekend a hike at the Bashakil, and you'll see the volunteers there with their spotting scopes, and they will invite you to look at the nests and any eaglets that we see. Thank you so very much for coming. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to shout out a question, you're welcome to do so.
That analogy I've used myself over which we are in experiments.
Yeah.
Anybody born after World War II.
Yeah.
And the advent of consumers and
Yeah.
what they do with all the chemicals they invented during the war.
Yeah.
You got to sell it to somebody.
Yeah.
And you go blast.
And even then, like, and I'm not trying to get all weird and political, and this is something else, but like, even after we banned DDT, we said, oh, this is horrible, it's poison, we don't want DDT, so we banned it. Oh, I'm sorry, we banned it in the United States. We still sold it to other countries and bought food from them. All right, so just you know, we're more surrounded by chemicals than we are sometimes aware. Sorry, that was,
When you, attached to the nest, the eagle camera
uh-huh.
we watch in Florida, the owl would come at night and go
Ooh.
into the nest.
Oh, wow.
The female got knocked out once, but she only fell down a couple of branches.
Wow.
But it was surprising how many times it showed up at night to
Wow.
chase the eagles.
Huh. Wow. I didn't know, and someone on the chat had pointed out as well how much of a threat owls would be. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Sure. Sure. Do you need either a picture or a signature? Sure. Great. Sure. Yeah. All right. Hold. No, there's a lousy picture. Let's get an eagle on the screen and we'll get a picture.
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming. All right. So good. Glad you enjoyed it. So we'll get a good eagle and we'll get a picture. All right. You want a picture? Get a selfie there?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Are you involved at all in any kind of composting aside from what you do in your yard?
No, I am not. And so I worry about the Roundup on Pine Island, sure, because of cancer. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We just don't study nature as well. Like a long-term study. I'm sorry, I'm gonna just answer this. Like longitudinal studies where you say you were exposed to this years ago and now this is causing cancer now. Those things are really expensive to do in humans. So wildlife is really tricky.
And they can trace it.
Yeah.
You know, it's only till recently, really.
Yeah. So that's a great point. It tends to be expensive, and there aren't as many good studies that do that.